My name is Shantae, and we are having our first ever episode of Parent to Parent Stories from the NICU unit. And tonight we have with us Julian, and he had a child in the NICU unit back in 2011. Julian, tell us how you ended up with a child in the NICU unit.
My wife was 26 and a half weeks along in gestation cycle, and it was actually about 2 days before Thanksgiving, and she and I were going to do some last minute shopping, and we just stopped by for a routine checkup at the doctor, and within an hour, the doctor was admitting us into the hospital.
Okay. You care to tell us anything about your little one?
Sure. Uh, My little guy, we nicknamed him Jew too because my name is Julian and my nickname is Jew, and we named him after me. So he was our namesake. So we called me Jew one and we called him Jew two.
How did his stay go while he was in the NICU unit? Can you tell us anything about that?
It was kind of rough. Um, it was really touch and go a lot. There were a lot of things. I mean, neither one of us had ever been to a NICU before. Um, there were a lot of things going on in the NICU. There were a lot of kids there, or there were a lot of babies there who were at total different levels. Like there were some kids there who they were only going to be in the NICU for like about 4 days, and then there were other kids who had been in the NICU for weeks, and they were going to continue to be there for several more weeks. So it was really, it was a really somber experience. Um, Sometimes it was a little depressing, and other times, people try to do their best to keep you, to cheer you up.
You said your wife went in 2 days before Thanksgiving. How far along was your wife as far as gestational time period?
She was 26 and a half weeks.
And how long did your stay in the NICU unit end up being total?
I think we were in the NICU for about 18 days total.
Would you care to tell us about any of your happy times and what made that experience a happy time while you and your little one were in the NICU unit?
Um, One of the happy times for us was when we actually got a chance to hold him and get a chance to touch him. Most of the time when people hear about babies in the NICU, they show pictures of the mom or the father holding the baby, but the reality of it is that's when the baby is much further along. For numerous children that were in the NICU during the time that Jutu was in the NICU, they were closer to like 26 weeks, 25 weeks, 28 weeks, and at that time period, you may not be able to hold your child. So that was that time, that moment when they let me change his diaper and they let me hold him. That was probably like the hype moment. That was an exciting moment for me. I don't think I've ever been that excited to see poo in my life.
How did he respond in that moment? Was it one of those connection moments or was it one of those moments where he's like, who is this touching me?
I think it was more so like, who the crap is this, and put me down. He didn't know who was holding him at that moment. They had the little blinders on his eyes to protect his eyes from the little infrared lamps that they had, um, the little heat lamps that they had on him. So he couldn't really see who was actually holding him. So he threw kind of a fit for the most part.
What was one of your lower moments while at the NICU? Or one of your
Um,
sad moments?
I think one of my sad moments was when they had him on the oscillator machine, and the oscillator machine is forcing air in and out of his lungs so fast that his lungs don't have to move because we use muscles to breathe and all that good stuff. And when you're that age, your body is still learning how to breathe. So it takes the learning part out of it and just allows him to get oxygen in and out. So I was looking at him, and when the oscillator is running, their chests inflate like a balloon. So it was really difficult to see him with that oscillator running, and they would try to get him off the oscillator, and he'd start breathing normal, and then all of a sudden things would start going downhill, and they'd have to put him back on the oscillator again. So that was really rough.
During that rough time, did you have anyone you could lean on? Any support staff, a small group, or family? Who was there during that time for you?
What was funny was my parents and my in-laws were there a lot. My parents and my in-laws called me every day. They called me every morning. They called me for lunch, and they called me late at night to check on me and to check on my wife and to check on the baby. So that meant a lot. Where we live, we don't have any family here, and most of our friends actually live, away. They don't live in this city, so that meant a lot.
Any kind of songs or sings that you care to share with our audience as far as that helped you get through that moment or something that was repetitious in that moment?
I would probably say we read a lot of Dr. Seuss to him, and just reading the Dr. Seuss books, that was really a big deal. Being able to read to him made me feel like I was contributing something to him.
And any tips that you have for the parents? Any tips that you can share parent to parent or anything extra that you would like to share about your experience?
Definitely for the parents who are going to both be there at the NICU, um, you know, hands down, don't become one another's enemy, be one another's friends. There's so much stuff that's going on at the NICU, and you don't really know what's going on. And there's people around you who are working, and most of them aren't even meaning to be rude or anything, but they're just doing their job. And there's so much stuff going on that a lot of times you feel really alone while you're there. So you definitely want to, if your spouse is there, be there for your spouse, be there for one another. That's not the time to be selfish. That's the time to be a team player. And another thing that I would highly advise is to download the Connect to NICU app. If I had had the Connect to NICU app when I was in the NICU, it would have helped me a lot, because while I was in the NICU, they were constantly telling me things, and I was constantly seeing things, and I didn't know what any of it meant. And the Connected NICU app allows you to tap into all that terminology and learn what all that stuff means and figure out what the nurses are telling you and what the machines are. And it may not bring you all the joy in the world, but it does give you some peace of mind to at least know what's going on.
I actually have one final question for you. Where you said you had a son. Where is your son now?
My son is no longer with us. My son, on the 18th day, as a matter of fact, it was on the day that we were supposed to meet with the doctor to discuss um, our preparations for the near future of bringing him home. He passed on that day. Um, so he's no longer with us here.
Would you have any advice for parents who have lost their child while in the NICU?
Um, I would definitely tell parents, don't run away from your emotions that you feel in that moment. Go ahead and walk those emotions out. One of the things that happened to me was I got really excited when we met with a group, a grief share group, and I met all these guys who were in my age group, and we got a chance to just kind of talk about how we felt that night. And that was probably one of the best healing moments that I had immediately after the passing of my son. Don't hide how you feel. Most people are not going to understand how you feel. Probably the dumbest yet funniest thing that anyone ever told me was that they had lost their dog and how close their dog was to them, and that their dog was like their child, and so they knew how I felt. And I just stood there kind of in shock. I mean, people are going to tell you things that are going to be absolutely nuts. Um, but don't hide your emotions. Go ahead and let them do what they need to do, because if you do, then you'll actually be able to learn how to live with the situation. it happened, and no life is never and life is never going to be the same, because if my Jutu was here now, my life would never be the same as it was before he arrived. So with him not being here, it's never going to be the same as it was when he was here. So I just let those emotions flow, especially to the dads out there. We're taught to be the big tough guy, but I've watched people literally crumble, guys much more manlier than me, and they're just a wreck because they didn't just, let those emotions do what they got to do.
Julian, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thanks.
That is the close of our first parent-to-parent stories from the NICU. And have a great night.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.